So I'm doing a drawing here of some lovely spring flowers, and I'm using a technique called continuous line drawing. I've chosen to draw it in a biro because it's just readily accessible and it's a really nice material to use to draw outlines, and I'm generally working continuously without lifting the pen off the paper, and if I want to move from one area to another I'm just like reducing the pressure as I move around. If you do this, it's much easier to do it with one eye closed, and that really helps. And the reason it really helps is because it helps flatten what you're looking at, so you get a two-dimensional view instead of a three-dimensional view. And then I started putting in just a little bit of colour to give me some base tones, and using the lovely strong outlines to work with. The beauty of pen and wash being that you've got all your structure delineated using your outlining material, whether it's a biro or fine liner or dip pen, and then you can kind of work much more freely with the watercolour over the top, and you don't need to do as much work within the watercolour to achieve your outcome. Okay, so what I've now done is I've bumped the colour up on the flowers quite a bit, and I've started to add in a background colour because I've got lots of white flowers here and very pale flowers, and I wanted to make them really look like they're white rather than just sort of white on white. So I've built up a bit of background colour around the flowers in a couple of layers so far. Just going to put a tiny bit more on. So all I'm doing is working very closely and carefully around in the negative shapes in between the flowers, and trying to keep well away from the whites of the actual flowers themselves. So the white of the flower is not painted, it is the white of the paper. So it is really important not to cover it in watercolour, because once the watercolour goes over it, you can't get it back very easily. You won't be able to get back to pure white. You might be able to get back to something nearly white, but very difficult. So you can use masking fluid sometimes for that, but in this case I just want to be able to kind of work around it. They're reasonably sort of solid shapes, so it's actually not too difficult to do. So just gently and carefully working in some of these negative shapes, slightly stronger intensity of tone. Not an enormous amount of water on the brush, just a small amount just coming out of the brush naturally because of it having the reservoir and the colour that I've mixed before. And just do a tiny bit darker and just blur that out into the background, and I want to leave a few little brush marks showing so that it keeps a bit of liveliness to the picture. And I think we're almost there really. I like this area there, that's working really well. So it's just like a last opportunity now to just put in maybe a tiny bit of extra intensity of shadow in a few places, and maybe some detail like around here. What I'm looking at, I can see that there's actually some really dark bits just directly underneath the flower. So I'll just put a little bit of intensity of dark under here, and it helps to exaggerate the flower. And then let me just see what else we've got. So maybe a bit of an outline on one or two of these purples. So go really dark in just a few places. So adding a bit of sharp contrast can really help make things sort of become much more three-dimensional, and sort of, yeah, I think probably that just stand out a lot more. But I've got to be careful not to overwork it, so it's incredibly easy to overwork things and go too far. And people often say, when is a painting finished? And it's a very personal thing, and stopping, pausing, looking at it from a distance always helps. But sometimes if you do something like this where you video it and you record it and then you look back, you realise that actually maybe it would have been better to stop sooner. But the beauty of doing that and looking back at it is that it actually gives you an opportunity to learn from that experience, and each time you do it you kind of know better when to stop. So I think on these lovely little forget-me-nots, they've got some pinks in here, so I'm just going to add a bit of pink. They've actually got yellows in the centre as well, so drop a tiny bit of yellow in the centre here to just kind of radiate out, so it gives it a bit more zing. There we are, I'm really fine for that. And then I think over here we missed a bit of green on this little dog violet. Is it dog violet? Or sweet violet, I think it's called. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. And this could do with a bit of strength of colour. I might go for a bit of my actually mixed sap green now, because it's just something to kind of give it a little bit more sort of zing with a tiny bit of lemon yellow in it. So really nice zingy, punchy green for the last stage. And that just helps to kind of lift some of these areas that are nice and bright, and I think sometimes it's hard to get really sharp fresh green, but most of the ready mixed greens are actually too strong, so that's why I tend to reserve them until right at the end to just add on in a few places to just lift it a little bit. Okay, so I think we're pretty much almost there really, and now what I would do now is actually look at it from a bit of a distance, decide if there's any bits that are kind of glaring out at me that need some attention, and otherwise just stop there.